We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 27a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had a contradiction within Rabbi Meir whether a non-Jew is allowed to circumcise a Jewish child. And the question over there was whether or not there's a suspicion that the non-Jewish Moel is going to murder the child or not. And the Gemara now answers, Berofe Mumcha. It's not a contradiction because we allow the non-Jew to circumcise the child in a situation where it's a Rofe Mumcha, where he is an expert doctor. Rashi explains, Rofe Mumcha lo mora nafshe l'shavya kros shifcha. He doesn't want to ruin his reputation by injuring the child, and so therefore, again, Rabbi Meir would say in a normal situation, an Ovid Kochavim is not allowed to circumcise a Jewish child, but in a situation where it's a Rofe Mumcha, he doesn't want to lose his reputation, then it would actually be permitted. And the Gemara continues, D'chiyasar Rav Dimi Amar Rav Yochanan, because when Rav Dimi came, he said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Im haya mumcha l'ravim mutter, that if he's an expert to the public, so then it's going to be mutter. But the Gemara still continues and asks, V'savar Rabbi Yehuda kusi shaper dami, according to the way we're now understanding the Brisa, there was a question whether to reverse the Brisa or not. According to the way we're currently understanding the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda really holds that a kusi, a Samaritan, is allowed to perform the bris milah on a Jew. V'atanya, but we learned in a Brisa, Yisrael moles hakusi, it says that a Jew is allowed to give a bris milah to a kusi. The kusi lo yimol Yisrael, but a kusi is not allowed to give a bris milah to a Yisrael, to a Jew. Mivnei shemol l'shem har grizim. This was mentioned on the previous Amud, this idea, because when the kusi would give a bris milah, they would do it l'shem har grizim, towards their Avoda Zara of har grizim, and so therefore it's not allowed. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. So here you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds a kusi is not allowed to give a bris milah to a Yisrael, and that contradicts the brisa we had on the previous Amud. Amar lo Rabbi Yossi, the brisa continues. Rabbi Yossi said to him, he said to Rabbi Yehuda, V'chi heichon matzinu milah min haTorah l'shma. Where do we ever find that milah has to be done according to the Torah l'shma, that it has to be done for the sake of the mitzvah? What difference? It doesn't make what he has in mind. Elamol v'holech achatetze nishma. So let the kusi give as many bris milahs as he wants to until he dies, meaning the point is Rabbi Yossi says there's no problem whatsoever. And so the Gemara says, Ela liolam epach, rather that brisa which presented a contradiction within Rabbi Meir, you should actually reverse the opinions in that brisa, meaning reverse the opinions of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda in that brisa, and therefore we actually have no contradiction within Rabbi Meir, we now have a contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda. Kida abchinan meikar, just like we reversed originally, when they originally on the previous summit asked the question from the brisa, they had reversed the opinions in the brisa. Udekakasha de Rabbi Yehuda, and now you have a question, a contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda. The answer to that is, Ahid Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. That brisa is actually Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Omer, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, Minayin lamila ba'ovid kochavim shipsula. From where do we know that bris milah by an ovid kochavim is puzzle? Talmud lomar v'yata es brisi tishmor. That's learned out from a pasuk by Avram Avinu. It says v'yata es brisi tishmor, and so therefore again the brisa which says that Rabbi Yehuda says that milah by an ovid kochavim is puzzle because of this pasuk of v'yata es brisi tishmor, that actually is Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and the brisa which we are reversing, that brisa says according to Rabbi Yehuda that milah by an ovid kochavim is actually fine. And Rashi explains, rather you should reverse that brisa like we did originally, meaning that if you reverse the brisa, the Rabbi Yehuda kusi aser, if you reverse the brisa, so then according to Rabbi Yehuda kusi, it's going to be forbidden to give a bris milah to a Jew. V'ovid kochavim mutter, and an ovid kochavim is going to be mutter, and that's why we're not going to have a problem in Rabbi Meir anymore, because by reversing it, Rabbi Meir holds an ovid kochavim is aser. That's across the board. Rabbi Meir says that because of the concern for murder. And again, Rabbi Yehuda says kusi aser and ovid kochavim is mutter. The ovid kochavim ein darko lamul banav l'shem avodas kochavim, and the logic is that an ovid kochavim doesn't normally give a bris milah to his children for the sake of Avoda Zara. That's why that's mutter. V'l'shvichas damim lo chayesh hoel v'acherim al gabav, and Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned for murder because there are other people that are standing over him. Udekasha loch Rabbi Yehuda. Now you had a contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda to pasal milas ovid kochavim exeres hakosav, because there was a brisa that was also brought in the previous Amud where Rabbi Yehuda says it's a problem when an ovid kochavim gives a bris milah to a Jew from the Gzeres HaKosav of V'yatos Brisi Tishmor. Hahi Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. That actually is that brisa is actually following Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Chisda says, my time with Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Rashi explains, my time with Rabbi Yehuda bar pluksa de Rabbi Yossi. This is the Rabbi Yehuda that argued with Rabbi Yossi on the brisa that we just brought on this Amud to pasal kusi. Again, that was a machlokas whether a kusi is allowed to give the bris milah. Rabbi Yehuda said that a kusi is not allowed to give the bris milah, and Rabbi Yossi said, why not? There's no halacha that bris milah has to be lishma, and so the Gemara is now asking, where does Rabbi Yehuda get the idea that apparently bris milah does need to be lishma? That's what it means. My time with Rabbi Yehuda, and the answer is dichsiv, because it's written in the pasuk LaHashem Himol. We'll see Rashi in a moment on all of this, but it says LaHashem Himol. That means it has to be lishma. For Rabbi Yossi Himol Yimol. Now Rabbi Yossi says no, from a different pasuk. There's a pasuk which says Himol Yimol Yilid Beischo Miknas Kaspecha, which is an inclusion that says that it does not have to be lishma. V'idach haksiv LaHashem Himol. Now the other one, meaning Rabbi Yossi, what does he do with the pasuk of LaHashem Himol? That sounds like it does need to be lishma. Hahu bePesach ksiv. That pasuk is written by the Karban Pesach. V'idach nami haksiv Himol Yimol. Now Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do with Himol Yimol? That sounds like an inclusion that it does not need to be lishma. And to that the Gemara says Dibra Torah Kalashon B'nei Adam. The Torah speaks the way that people speak, meaning to say sometimes the Torah employs a double language. You're not supposed to learn anything out from that extra word. Rashi explains LaHashem Himol. Again, we're going to learn out from LaHashem Himol the idea of lishma by bris milah. It says V'asa Pesach LaHashem Himol. It says, first it talks about Karban Pesach, and then it says Himol Lo Kol Zochar, and we're going to put those two words together, LaHashem Himol. V'darish Bei Mila Lishma. We're going to darshan this idea of Mila Lishma. Hilkach Kusi Pasal. That's why Kusi is no good. Demol Shalo Lishma, because he's going to give the bris milah not lishma. Now, if it needs to be lishma, what about an Ovid Kochavim? Says Rashi, Aval Ovid Kochavim Lo Moel Ela Adaita Di Yisrael. But the Ovid Kochavim, when he gives the bris milah, he's doing it in terms of what the Jew thinks. Sha'omer Lo Moel V'hainu Lishma, meaning the Jew is telling him to do the bris milah, and the Ovid Kochavim is just doing it on the understanding of the Jew. So that is considered to be lishma. In other words, there's a requirement of lishma, but it only disqualifies a kusi. That requirement would not disqualify an Ovid Kochavim. Himol Himol Ribuyahu. Himol Himol is an inclusion. But Pesach Ksiv. So again, the response to that is that LaHashem Himol might be talking about Karban Pesach, meaning LaHashem Dekra Pesach Ko. You could argue that the word LaHashem in the pasuk is going on the Karban Pesach. Shetei Asiyaso Lishma, that it's the Karban Pesach that needs to be done lishma. And again, when it comes to Himol Yimol, there it can be argued Dibra Torah Kalashon B'nei Adam. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was stated the following, Machlokas Amorai, Minayin Lamila Ba'ovid Kochavim Shipsula. From where do we know that bris milah done by an Ovid Kochavim is disqualified? Daro Bar Papa Mishmei de Rav Amar. Daro Bar Papa says in the name of Rav. We learned that from Viatoes Brisi Tishmor. It says, you're going to watch my covenant. And so we understand that it means to say Jewish people, not Ovdei Kochavim. For Rabbi Yochanan, Himol Yimol. And Rabbi Yochanan, he learns it from Himol Yimol. Rashi explains, V'yata Brisi Tishmor, V'zaracha Acharecha. It says over there, V'yata as Brisi Tishmor Atah V'zaracha Acharecha L'dorosam. So it means your children after you. V'lo Ovid Kochavim, that means to say not Ovid Kochavim, that excludes idol worshippers. And the other possible source is from Himol Yimol. It comes from the pasuk of Himol Yimol. That's Rabbi Yochanan's source. And what is that? Kari Bei Hamol Yimol. What that means is a person who had bris milah should give bris milah. Mishu Mol Yimol Acher. One who has bris milah should give bris milah to others. And so that would be the reason to exclude an Ovid Kochavim. The Gemara says, Mai Beinayu. What's the difference between these two opinions? They're both learning out from a pasuk. Is there any practical difference? And the Gemara says there is a difference. Aravi Mol. You can have an Arab who has a bris milah, so he technically fulfills the pasuk of Himol Yimol. Or also you can have a Gavnuni Mohol. And Rashi explains Gavnuni is Uma Mahula. That was a particular nation that they got bris milah. And so the Gemara says, Ika Beinayu, that's the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Man Damar Himol Yimol, the one who says that we learn from Himol Yimol that it has to be a Jewish person. So then Ika, again, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. So Ika would be fine then to have a bris milah from an Aravi Mol or Gavnuni Mol, because the point of the source is it just has to be someone who has a bris milah. And so an Aravi Mol or a Gavnuni Mol, they'd be able to give a bris milah to a Jew. Uman Damar Esbrisi Tishmor, and the one who says that we learn from Esbrisi Tishmor that it can't be an Ovid Kochavim, so Leka, so then it would not be allowed from an Aravi Mol or a Gavnuni Mol. But the Gemara continues and asks, Ulaman Damar Himol Yimol Ika, but according to the one who says that we learn from Himol Yimol, meaning according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says we learn it has to be a Jew from the fact that it says Himol Yimol, that the person giving the bris milah has to have had a bris milah. So then apparently we were saying above that an Aravi Mol, a Gavnuni Mol are able to give a bris milah to a Jew. Is that really true? But we learned in a Mishnah Nedarim, Konem Shaninena Min Ha'arelim. Let's say a person takes a konem, meaning he forbids to himself, he's not going to get any benefit from someone who's an orel. Yisrael, from someone who doesn't have a bris milah, so mutter ba'ar Yisrael, he's actually mutter to get benefit from a Jewish person who does not have a bris milah. V'yasr b'mulei ovdei kochavim, but he's forbidden to get benefit from somebody who's an oved kochavim, even if that person has a bris milah. Alma afagav de mehili, command lo mehili dama. We see from that Mishnah that when it comes to ovdei kochavim, when it comes to idol worshippers, even though they have a bris milah, they're actually still considered like they don't have a bris milah, and so therefore, even if you learn from himol yimol, it still should not be permitted to have a bris milah from an aravi mol or a gavnuni mol. Rashi explains, Konem shani nene lo arelim, ma shani nene minho arelim, osur olai bekonim. Whatever benefit I'm getting from arelim, from those who are uncircumcised, that should be forbidden to me bekonim. The konim hu lashon hektish. The word konim is a language of hektish, of consecration, the idea being that it is forbidden. So again, you can't really say that's the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. And so the Gemara continues and says instead, Ella rather ika beinayu, the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is as follows. Yisrael shemesu echav machmas milah. Let's say you have a Jewish person and his brothers died when they got bris milah. The halach is that he therefore is exempt from bris milah. He doesn't need to have a bris milah. V'lo malu, and therefore they didn't give this particular Yisrael a bris milah. So that's going to be a nafkamina. Laman domer v'yatah es brisi tishmor. According to the one who says that it has to be a Jewish person, that's learned from v'yatah es brisi tishmor. So ika, so he can give the bris milah because he's a Jewish person. The fact that he doesn't have a milah doesn't matter. And laman domer himol yimol. But according to the one who says that one who has a bris milah is the one who has to give the bris milah, so lekka, so he can't give the bris milah because he doesn't have the bris milah. But the Gemara continues and asks, so laman damar himol yimol, but according to the one who learns from himol yimol, lekka, so you're not able to get a bris milah from a person, again, from a Jew whose brothers died from bris milah and he did not have a bris milah because he's considered to be one who doesn't have a bris milah. But that's also not true. V'hatnan, but we learned in the Mishnah Nedarim, konem shani nene mimulim, let's say a person takes a konem about benefiting from those who have bris milah, asur ba'ar leYisrael, he's not allowed to get benefit from a Jew, even if that Jew does not have a bris milah, because it's considered that he has a bris milah. He only couldn't get it because of some circumstance that forced him that he wasn't able to get a bris milah. Umutter b'mulei ovdei kochavim, he's actually mutter to get benefit from those who are idol worshippers who have a bris milah, because they're not considered to really have a bris milah. So alma, so we see afagav de lo mehili commanded mehili dama. We see that when it comes to Jewish people, even if a Jew does not have a bris milah, but again, if it was because of circumstances beyond his control, it's considered like he does have a bris milah. So that can't really be the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. And so the Gemara says, Elo ika beinayu isha. Rather, the difference between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is whether a woman could give the bris milah. Laman da'amar v'yatah es brisi tishmor. According to the one who says we learn it from v'yatah as brisi tishmor leka. So then we will say that she's not able to give the bris milah. The isha lav bas milah, because a woman is not able, she's not in the category of milah, and therefore she can't give a bris milah. Well, laman da'amar himol yimol. Now, when it comes to the one who says himol yimol, that one who has a milah can give a bris milah, ika. So then actually a woman could give a bris milah, even though technically she doesn't physically have a bris milah. The isha command the mehila damya, because a woman actually is considered as if she has a bris milah. But the Gemara continues and asks, so but is there anyone that says that a woman is not able to give a bris milah? Because again, we're saying above that according to Rav, who learns from V'yatas Brisi Tishmor, since women are not commanded in bris milah, therefore they're not in the category of bris milah, they can't give a bris milah. But does anyone really say that? But it's written in the pasuk, Vatikach Tzipora Tzur. It says that Tzipora, she took the flint, meaning Tzipora did a bris milah. That's found in the pasuk, and therefore it seems to be that women are allowed to give a bris milah. The Gemara says, Kari Bei Vatakach. Well, you can read the pasuk as Vatakach, she caused others to take. But doesn't it also say in that pasuk that she cut off? It sounds like again she did the bris milah. Kari Bei Vatachres, again you should read the pasuk that she caused others to cut off, meaning the Umral Inish Achrina V'avet. She told the man to do it, and he did it. And the Gemara continues with the second answer. If you want, I could say, As Yo'i v'aschala, she came and she began the milah. V'yasa Moshe v'yagmara, but Moshe came and he finished it. And so therefore, again, it really was done by a man. And Rashi explains, Vatakach al yedei shliach, again, she used an agent. That's how we can interpret the pasuk. Vatachreis amra la'acher v'karis. In other words, she told somebody else, and he was the one that did the bris milah. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Misrapid mehen ripoy mamon. A person is allowed to be healed from the non-Jews, what's called a ripoy mamon, a monetary healing. We'll see what that means in the Gemara. Avalo ripoy nefashos, but he cannot have a healing of the soul. Vein mistaprin mehen b'chol makom, and you're not allowed to get haircuts from them anywhere. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's Rabbi Meir's opinion. V'chachamim omer, but the chachamim say, b'reshus harabim mutter. In reshus harabim, if it's in the public thoroughfare, it's mutter to get a haircut from a non-Jew. Avalo beino leveino, but it should not be done privately. And Rashi explains, Misrapin mehen means mekablin mehen refuah, we can receive from them medical services. Mamonu nefashos begemara mefarish. The Gemara will explain what it means, ripoy mammon, what it means, ripoy nefashos. Vein mistavrin mehen b'chol makom, you can't get a haircut at all. Afilo b'shvilei rishos harabim, according to Rabbi Meir, even in public, you can't get haircuts from the non-Jews. She'over and sham tadir, even though there are people there all the time. Shem yachtoch tzavar b'sar, because we're afraid maybe he's going to cut his neck with the razor. The Gemara says, my ripoy mammon, my ripoy nefashos. What does it mean that you're allowed to have ripoy mammon from an ovid kochavim, but you're not allowed to have ripoy nefashos from an ovid kochavim? Ilema ripoy mammon b'schar. If you're going to say that ripoy mammon means that you're paying for it, and ripoy nefashos bechinam, and ripoy nefashos means it's free, meaning you're allowed to be healed from a doctor who's not Jewish if you pay him, but if you get it for free, you're not allowed. But then listni misrapin mehen b'schar avolo bechinam. It should just say that you're allowed to be healed from them if you're going to pay, but you can't do it if you're not going to pay. And so the Gemara says that's not the interpretation. Ella rather ripoy mammon. What does it mean? A monetary healing. Davar shein bo sakon. It means that it was something that wasn't posing a danger to the person's life. That's allowed. But ripoy nefashos, that's not allowed. That's davar sheyesh bo sakona. That's if a person is in danger of his life. But the Gemara continues and asks, but didn't Rav Yehuda say, afilu rivda de kusil solo matzinan minayo, that even an incision from bloodletting, you're not allowed to get that kind of healing from them. So apparently, even if it poses no danger, it's forbidden. And so the Gemara instead says, ella ripoy mammon behemto, rather ripoy mammon, which is permitted, that's if the non-Jew is healing the person's animal. Ripoy nefashos, and what does ripoy nefashos mean? Gufe, that means his own body, that's not allowed. V'hainu damar Rav Yehuda, that's what Rav Yehuda said, afilu rivda de kusilsa lo metzinan minayo, that even an incision from bloodletting, we cannot be healed in that way from them. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Chisda Amar Marukva. Rav Chisda said that Marukva said, Avolim Amar lo samploni yafa lo samploni ra lo mutter. But if the non-Jew says to the Jew that this particular medicine is good for him or this particular medicine is not good for him, if he just gives him medical advice, so then mutter, it's permitted to follow that advice. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis.